Project presentations of 2025. My name is Roxanne Thompson, and I will be starting off this evening's events. Over the course of the last 8 months, many people have asked me what my project was about, and I managed to narrow it down to only a few words. I'm hand designing and hand printing graphic t-shirts that builds awareness of issues in my world. But this process was so much more than that. It was the exploration of creation and the discovery of the parts of our world that need to be revisited. It was a collaboration between something that fills my heart with joy and something that breaks my heart in two. Graphic t-shirts have always been a big part of my family, as you can see. My dad introduced us to his old funky graphic t-shirts that his friends printed in uni. Me and my sibling wore those t-shirts threadbare, and soon it came time that they were unwearable. When looking for replacements for these now holy shirts, I found it hard to find ones as unique and special as those of my dad's. I saw a gap in the market, and I chose to act on it. The idea of printing graphic t-shirts excited me. It was a way to expand into a new art medium and explore uncharted territory. It was both art and fashion, things that I've been interested in since an early age. I didn't want to create any normal t-shirt, but wearable art. I also hoped that in the future, I could expand and work with other activist groups and build on the influence my brand and shirts have. In this day and age, there are so many issues weighing down on my generation. I didn't know how to portray them in designs that made sense. But when talking with my dad, he brought up the idea of the three pillars of sustainability. Basically, what this is three main ideas: social, economical, and environmental. He told me that when all work together in perfect harmony, we can achieve sustainability. I like this idea, the three parts of a whole all working together in balance. I chose this to be the guide of my designs, and I would end up with 7 designs in total. I felt empowered being able to speak up about the injustices in our world through my designs. I chose subtle but also thought-provoking displays of each protest. I hoped that people would see them as both art, but as also part of their everyday wear. I also started a small side hustle of taking old jeans and turning them into a special pair of new ones. I found it a cheap, sustainable way of upcycling old jeans and turning them into a unique pair of pants, such as the ones I'm wearing right now. All my creations fall under my new brand, Red Designs. I want to take a little bit to describe why I chose this name. Well, other than red being my favorite color, as many of you know, red can be associated with anger, passion, and violence. It can be seen being used in stop signs or indicating something of importance. It stimulates the heart rate and provokes people to take action. Red is assertive and demands attention, and that's why I thought it would be perfect for my brand. At the beginning of my process, I felt all but lost. I felt overwhelmed by the enormity of portraying all the protests. But, thankfully, with the help of my mentors, family, and my mom's bossy regimes, I got myself on track. I started off by speaking with my mentors, gaining as much knowledge from them as I could. When speaking with Lionel Davis, we dove into a deeper understanding of art in South Africa and how it was used in apartheid. With Adrian, we talked about how to bring my visions into reality, but also keep my expectations there. And with Angela McPherson, she helped talk through and polish each of my designs. She told me to go for it when I was too scared to start, and supplied me with much needed equipment. And finally, Jane, who was a steady guiding hand throughout the whole process and got excited, just as excited as I did about it all. When it came time for me to dive into the research part of my project, I took more strain than expected. I couldn't have prepared myself enough for the dark hole of horrors that it would open up about this world. Even though I just brushed the tip, it was overbearing. I could only do so much research at a time for how depressive it made me feel. But that doesn't take away from the fact of how important and interesting that all the information was. Now for the tools and equipment that I needed in order to complete my project process. I used 3 different mediums: screen printing, dyeing fabrics, and lino cut. Screen printing I found the easiest. It gave you a nice, finished, clean image. And it wasn't a big burden to clean up after a day of printing. I used water-based inks, which allowed me to clean my equipment with water and the high-pressure hose I found lying around my garden. The only problem that came with this process was the stencils. I chose to cut them all out by hand, and in the end had sores and blisters. Dyeing fabrics. This process took a little bit more thinking, for I had never dyed anything before. After a lot of trial and error, we finally found the right way to dye clouds and create an ombre effect. But it was very time-consuming. I spent up to 1.5 hours standing and stirring the t-shirts in boiling hot dye, which was tiresome to say the least. But in the end, I really liked the results and hope to continue trying different ways of dyeing in the future. And finally, lino cut. Boy, was this the most frustrating medium. At first, I couldn't find the right ink, and after searching tirelessly, we found some. But my lord, was the ink expensive. I also found that my prints would take 3 to 4 days to fully dry. That was a lot of time I was quickly running out of. The cleaning process was no less of a burden. I had chosen oil-based inks, which meant I needed some sort of solvent in order to clean my equipment. But thankfully, Angela stepped in with a few tips and tricks that made the whole process a lot more palatable. In the end, I did most of what I set out for myself, with many highs and lows, tears and laughs. And sadly, this chapter has now come to a close, but I couldn't be any more happy with the end result. And now I would like to play a short video that describes my designs each a little bit.
Deforestation. Our forests are being cut down all around us, and we are allowing the destruction of our beautiful planet and the plant life that we coexist with. Oceans rising. The sea is all-consuming. It soon will consume us. The ocean houses a variety of different species, and we should put our all into preserving what we have left. Meat industry. Animals are a source of life, of nutrients, but when we quit giving the respect and freedom due, we become the monsters. War. Our world is falling into disarray and despair. Wars are being waged all around us. We must fight to protect all who are swept up in the tide and hold on to some hope for a better tomorrow. Fast fashion, consumerism, micro-trends, influences, all have a tight grip around our society's neck, shedding layer after layer of wasted cloth. Mental health. The depiction of how easily one can get lost in their own mind, how we can feel lost and alone, and continue falling into an endless black abyss. Gender-based violence. Gender-based violence is a product of how we raised our society. We need to work in unison to decimate humanity's traits of violence.
Thank yous to the people who truly deserve it. Firstly, to my friends, for always bringing the creativity out in me, especially Katja, Hannah, and Jensen. And then to my mentors, especially to my internal mentor, Jane, for always being a guiding hand and bringing me through this whole process. And finally, a big thanks goes to my family for putting up with me through this whole process, especially my mom. And finally, a big thank you to you all for coming to watch this process tonight. And there's my stall, come check it out. Thank you.
All right, hello again. Good evening, everybody. I am Philip Grange, and my project is all about programming and where electronics meets high-level programming languages. So, last year, just like everybody else, we had to formulate project proposals. And I didn't have too much trouble settling on something that I wanted to do. But since it was related to programming and computers and electronics, and we're in a Waldorf school, I had to write a pretty strongly worded proposal for it to get accepted. I even had to make some changes after my first attempt, but in the end it all worked out. And I had big ideas for what my project was going to be about. I wanted to learn all about computer science, which I later learned wouldn't really work. My mentor told me that it involved a 3-year course, and it was just unnecessary. There were far better ways of coding. So he really guided me and helped set me on a path towards my entry into programming. I first had to pick a programming language to use, which translates all of the ones and zeros that computers can understand into words that us humans can, which is really helpful. And the levels of programming languages go from low to high level, and the high level ones are really optimized for programmers to work efficiently. Forgot to change my slides. So the other thing I had to do, and I settled on using the language C#. The next step was finding an IDE, an integrated development environment to use. They are like virtual workspaces that make it a lot easier for you to write your code and manage all of it. I picked VS Code and Unity for 2D game development, and VS Code for coding, as the name suggests. And I learned a lot of things about project management and planning out how you want to write your code and all of its functionality. Now, me being stubborn, I like using my own methods of doing things, and often I don't like planning at all, so I just jumped straight into what I was going to do. So I went off of a lot of online tutorials and resources, and I learned first to familiarize myself with the basics of the programming languages that I was going to use. And I made console apps with various functions, just experimenting with things like declaring variables and assigning values to them, and later on logical operations. So logic is, well, it's how you reason. And a computer conducts its reasoning differently to the way a human does. It's all conditions that are either being met or not being met that produce results. The next thing I learned about was object-oriented programming, which involves compartmentalizing your programs into objects, which, well, objects are pretty self-explanatory. It's just any kind of item with information attributed to it. And then you also split your programs up into methods. Methods are they're like functions. They act on data. And it's important to compartmentalize your program like this because it makes it easier to develop it further in the future, to find bugs, and to, just to add on to it, because you can invoke these objects and functions at will. I also learned about 2D game development. It was more just about the skills and the logic involved and getting a computer to do what you want it to do. I developed a little Flappy Bird game, which I named Flop Burb, and a car game. And both of them worked on the principle of the player staying in place and simply moving on the y-axis up and down, while other game objects would move left, creating the illusion that the player was moving right. And this is pretty interesting because a lot of games, even 3D games, use illusions to convey something to the player. And here's a funny picture. The code works. Don't touch it. But this isn't the best sentiment because it's always good to develop it further, but it's also very easy to make a mistake in your further developments and to end up with a program that doesn't work at all. Something else that I did was I got immensely sidetracked by digital electronics, which is where electronics transitions into computers and later into programming. And the whole basis of digital electronics lies in the binary number system, or base 2. It consists of 2 possible numbers, 1 and 0, but near infinite possibilities. So here I have a little circuit. Well, okay. Some of the first things I learned about in digital electronics were logic gates. Basically, sets of conditions that need to be met to produce certain outputs. Like an AND gate, for example, needs all inputs to be positive to get a positive output. And a very basic circuit that forms the basis of computers is the Hopf adder, which allows you to add 2 electrical signals together arithmetically, like you do in maths. 1 plus 1 equals 2. Here we get 1 plus 1 equals 1, 0, which is in fact 2 in binary. And my medium of experimentation in digital electronics was a game called Minecraft. It's really useful because it's got this substance called redstone and you can mimic electronic circuits with it. So I didn't need all of the physical parts, components and pieces and power sources and tools that I would have needed to work on electronics in the real world. And then here's just a little bit of history on computers themselves. So, as I mentioned, it all began with digital electronics, binary, 1s and 0s. And really early computers were mechanical. They had mechanical switches for these on and off states, which later transitioned into electronic devices like diodes and transistors. And it was only in the, prior to the 1980s, computers were quite bulky and difficult to use. They didn't really have user-friendly interfaces, so they were mostly used in industrial settings and to perform certain tasks. It was only after the launch of the Apple II PC and the IBM PC that PCs really became popular, the personal computer. And these 2 PCs, when they were released, they came out with spreadsheets and word processors for everyday use. And the first programming languages also emerged at the time, things like BASIC and Pascal, which served to form that bridge between the binary ones and zeros and terms that we can understand more easily. Because in reality, everything on your computer is just a long string of ones and zeros. So after that, I just want to give my thanks. Thanks are in order to my external mentor, Jonathan. He really helped to guide me and set me on the right path. He showed me learning resources and ways of thinking for how to go about programming. And then there was Luzanne Beer as well, the music teacher at our school. She always helped me to stay on track and supported my sidetracking, and she was always so enthusiastic about my project. I can't imagine how she does it, because it's not always easy to show interest and to be enthusiastic about something that somebody else is really passionate about. But she really did it, and she even tried her best to help me out where she could. And then I need to say thank you to my parents for providing me with, the tools I needed, and for helping me out with my book. I think of myself as being quite creative, but not necessarily in the artistic persuasion. I like problem solving and maths and science and all that. So my mom helped me a great deal with my book. And that concludes my speech. Thank you.
Hello everyone. For my grade 12 project, I decided to refurbish a go-kart, which I have no idea why I chose to do that, because I know nothing about engines at all. It all started when my friend actually invited me to a go-kart track at the beginning of the year. And I realized, I actually want one of these. It'd be so fun. So I asked my external mentor if he would like to help me, Gavin. He fortunately is here today. He said, yeah, he'd help me. And then he had a friend named Guy who would lend us his go-kart frame that we could refurbish, which was quite nice of him. On the first day, I cleaned it so much with the pressure hose. Didn't really clean it properly. There was still so much grease on the chains. It just looked terrible, honestly. And then after that, I took the wheels off because we had to get those replaced. My dad knew of a place where we could get them placed in some bike shop in Maitland. Don't know the name. So while we were waiting for those, I cleaned the thing again because I'm horrible at cleaning. Don't know why. And then we took the cage off. The cage was a massive challenge for me because it took me like an hour and 30 minutes just to take it off the frame because of all the tension that it had. And then I took it back to my place, spray painted it orange, put some gloss in it, put 2 coats on it, and it looked really nice. And then after that, got the tires back the next few days. The tires were looking really good. It's proper off-road tires. We didn't decide to put it back on straight away. We decided to take the engine to a mechanic because, like I said, don't know what I'm doing. And he said the engine was too messed up to try to fix. It was too tweaked out, too DIY. If I tried to start it, it would actually rev up by itself and explode. So I'm glad I didn't try to start it. Then we just ordered an engine from the mechanic, got that replaced, waited a few days for that. And while we waited for that, we had to get the seat recovered, replaced, everything. And there's a hard seat behind it made with fiberglass, so you don't hit the engine. We got that replaced, all fixed up. And we added a piece of flat bar for more protection, just in case, obviously, the seat doesn't work out. Then we got the engine back, we mounted that on the cage, not the cage, the frame. And then we realized the engine's too big for the cage to go back on. And then my dad thought of the idea of angle grinding the muffler so that we could just make it fit on. So we did that, fit on perfectly. It is a bit louder than it's supposed to be, but I don't think that's a problem. We got the seat back, it was recovered, and we stripped it down completely so I could spray paint it again, the frame, with a tangerine. It was looking really nice until when we put the new engine on, we got a new clutch for it because the clutch was completely messed up. The first time we tried to start it, we shouldn't have tried. The thing actually accelerated by itself, almost crashed into my garage door, denting it. The nose was up like this, holding it. It's terrible. Switched it off all nice. Obviously had no idea what was wrong, so we took it back to the mechanic. Obviously, don't know what engines do. He said the clutch was apparently too brand new, which I don't know how that's possible. Like what? He said we have to wear it out, but okay, it wears out by itself because it accelerates by itself, so I don't know. So it still does that. I haven't fixed that. I didn't have time. So we put the wheels back on. We spray painted the wheels with black heat-resistant paint, which was nice. We cleaned it one last time because I still suck at cleaning. Still so much. There might even be grease on it now. I have no idea. Put the wheels back on. We got the seat back. It was covered in nice leather. We put that on. We put the flat bar. We had to hammer it into the frame because there's nowhere else to put it. Put the fiberglass back onto the frame, and then the cage. Trying to put the cage back onto the frame was terrible. It took me, again, like 2 hours just to put on. At the end, I just got a mallet and just malleted it into the frame. There was no point, honestly. And then the first proper test drive, first proper one, we took it to a dirt road, and then I was in it. Like we went around, and then I realized I tried to brake, but something was wrong. Apparently the brakes weren't working. I should have thought of that beforehand, but it's fine. And also the accelerator cable wasn't also tight enough, so it wasn't going the full accelerating. So we had to get that replaced, but we didn't get the brake cable replaced because brakes only slow you down. So it still doesn't brake properly, it just like slows you down a bit, and then that's it. So we put all of it back together, and it works, but it like just does its own thing, really. Like, I don't know, it's terrible. I just want to say thank you to my mentor, Mr. Shaw. For the one meeting we had the whole year. And to my external mentor for obviously helping me out. My dad, he also helped out a bit. He was basically like the second external mentor. And my mom, for my family, for supporting me. Thank you. And I will start it now for you guys.
Hi everyone, confession time. Raise your hand if you've ever picked up a piece of sea glass and thought, ooh, shiny. Pick up your hands because I know you've all done it. Okay. Yeah, me too. What if I told you that your pretty sea glass treasure used to be someone's broken beard bottle from a party in 1997? Romantic, right? My name is Karine Pullinger, and today I want to take you on a journey, not just across beaches, but through plastic waste, pollution, and how I almost became a firefighter, but instead ended up becoming an environmental detective with glue in my hair and plastic bags in my backpack. Let's rewind. Picture this, grade 11, newish school, everyone's buzzing about this grade 12 project, and I'm just sitting there like, wait, there's a what now? There we go. And ideas were flying through my head. I had becoming a firefighter, make a recipe book, paint tote bags, crochet, do beaded jewelry. I had too many ideas and zero direction. Then one day I was walking on the beach with my granny. I saw all the beautiful shells, the waves, the sunset, and then boom, rubbish everywhere. It was like Instagram versus reality. That image stuck in my head forever. I knew I couldn't unsee it, so instead of ignoring it, or doing the classic pick up a Coke bottle and chuck it in the bin, I thought, what if I could turn someone's trash into someone else's treasure? So let's talk about what's really floating in our oceans besides Nemo and Ariel. 170 trillion plastic particles, plastic bags that look like jellyfish, gourmet cuisine for sea turtles, cutlery that takes 1,000 years to decompose, like longer than Gossip Girl's been around. And fun fact, a tea bag, yes, your innocent cup of rooibos, can release 1.6 billion microplastics in boiling water. Let that sink in. Even your clothes are part of the problem. That stylish fleece hoodie, whoever's wearing one, releases 250,000 microfibers in a single wash. Every laundry day is basically a plastic party we didn't RSVP to. But here's where it gets cool. I didn't want to just learn about the problem. I wanted to play MacGyver with the garbage. The ones who get it. So I started collecting stuff from the beach. Sea glass, plastic wrappers, bottle caps, straws, the occasional flip-flop, don't ask. Then I experimented. Melt plastic, make jewelry, turn bags into yarn and crochet with it, break a nail and glue myself to a piece of sea glass. It was interesting to explore just how challenging certain materials are to work with. When I started experimenting with plastic, I felt like I was contributing to the problem because of the fumes. I nearly gassed my family. Some of the plastic wouldn't even melt. What I learned is this: creativity is a form of activism. So I decided to narrow my focus down to glass primarily. I also made a point of keeping the pieces in their original form that I found them in, just with the addition of varnish. Some pieces even include plastic and shells. My creations are unique because you'll never find a piece of sea glass that looks the same as another. Each has a story to tell. And I'm not the only one wanting to see change. In South Africa, companies are stepping up. Heineken is turning glass bottles into homeware. Petco and Extrawood are building school desks out of recycled plastic. Famous brands cut over 400 tons of plastic just by redesigning packaging. We're seeing real change when we combine imagination, innovation, and a little stubbornness. Here's the real eye-opener. We're all a part of this problem, and that used to make me feel helpless.
like no matter what I did, I was still contributing to the death of our planet. But then I realized, just because we can't do everything doesn't mean we should do nothing. Every eco-friendly choice, every reusable bottle, every responsible purchase, every weird plastic charm necklace made out of beach trash, that's where we'll see metamorphosis. So, what's the takeaway? Start small, be curious, wash your clothes in cold water, choose loose leaf tea, support brands that care, or better yet, make your own stuff. Make it weird, make it ugly, make it awesome. And if you ever find yourself stuck, wondering what to do next, just look at a piece of sea glass and remember that even something broken and tossed away can be tumbled, polished, and turned into something beautiful. This takes me back to my personal journey of growth. 2025 has not been kind. There's been trauma, loss, anger, anxiety, grief, and pain. But there's also been much joy, happiness, love, and growth on the other side. The name Metamorphosis, for me, represents both my own journey alongside my creations, and I couldn't be more proud of where I am in this journey. Next, I'd like to show you a few pictures of the process. So this is a clean process. I cleaned all the glass I found with Jik, so it's all very clean. I'm a bit of a germaphobe, so don't stress, it is clean. This is the making of mosaics on the left for you guys. And then on the right is me making my first ever jewelry pieces out of sea glass. This was the plastic experimentation. As you can see, that's how it started out, and that's how it ended up. So, not very pretty. And then, you can see it in the toasted sandwich machine. That's an interesting experience. And this was me creating plastic yarn to try and make a plastic bag that's a lot stronger than our ones that we find in Spa, for example. And these would actually last. And at the time I didn't have a crochet hook, so I carved one out of a stick that I found. This was just for fun, actually not for my project. I made this for my granny because she loves cats, as a Christmas present. So this was all taken from one afternoon at Sandy Bay Beach in Hout Bay. As you can see, there's tires, where they come from I have no clue. The microbeads and microplastics. In the middle is someone obviously tried to clean up and help, but compared to that, there is so much more on the beaches, it's insane. Microbeads again, there's actually some I collected at my stand, if anyone wants to come check it out. Some more of the, may look pretty, but it's not, colourful plastic and waste. This is a CD mirror mosaic that I made out of cut up CDs that we're going to get thrown away. And I did a combination of CDs and sea glass in the left for you guys. And then I made 3 in total. That's just CDs, and then sea glass. They're for sale, by the way. And then these are just a few of my pieces that I created. My favorite one, the top left, my first one I ever created. And lastly, before I wrap up, I want to say a heartfelt thank you to 3 incredible mentors and family who've helped shape this journey. To Kaylee, who could unfortunately not be here tonight, thank you for believing in my potential before I even saw it myself. Your guidance gave me the confidence to dive in and explore boldly. To Claudia, your support, honesty, and constant encouragement kept me grounded and inspired, especially when I wanted to give up halfway through melting plastic in my kitchen and writing my thesis. To Michelle, who could unfortunately also not be here tonight, thank you for challenging me to think deeper, dream bigger, and always ask, but what if we could do it differently? And lastly, to my family, thank you to my dad and brother for spending hours on the beach, helping me look for sea glass and trash, my grandpa, and again my dad, for sending through information on what to include in my research. And lastly, Nana, for going shelling and sitting with me, keeping me company while I work on my jewelry and mosaic. You've each played a unique role in this journey, and I'm deeply grateful. The project wouldn't be what it is without you.
Men, women, and children. My name is Aden Khan, and for my project, as you may have figured out from the teaser you just watched, was to create a collection of short films. Now, why did I choose this as my project? Simply speaking, because it is one of the most interesting things, both intellectual and practical, that I have ever done. Both the practice of absorbing some of the most interesting information out there and the practice of using them in a practical setting, using the learned knowledge and having the ability to actually apply what was learned was like a weird new experience for me. Another reason was because I wanted to stretch my creativity as far as it could go, and I mainly did this in my decision to not have a budget for any of the films. That's a total of $0. My decision was obviously met with resistance from family, but I persisted and went with what my gut was telling me and what I felt was necessary. This allowed me to give myself a challenge in using like ordinary household objects and building a narrative around those. But the main thing driving me was passion. The ins and outs of films is one of the only things I find myself actively going out to learn about, and I find myself actively wanting to practice, not just in one part, but in everything, whether it be script writing and learning how to use natural story progression and story structure, storyboarding, where it was a huge help because it allowed me to structure shots and like shoot things like similar shots, so it would save a lot of time. Editing, which was the most time-consuming out of the bunch. Learning how to track objects, overlay clips, picking the right shots and cutting them in a natural way, transitions. And the overall post-production was time-consuming, but once you get a hang of it, it's actually pretty fun. Color grading, which was the last thing I decided to focus on, but I quickly got obsessed with it. Learning how to properly adjust white balance, saturation, contrast from a camera that put everything in a more gray area to not take up space. So that was fun to learn about. Cinematography, which in my opinion was the funnest to learn about. Learning about movements, angles, framing. Overall, how to make it look appealing. I kind of used what I learned to strategically build videos to where there wasn't a need for complex movements. So every story had to be more static. Yeah, thank you. Every story, there was a reason why it was static. Throughout my efforts, I tried to make each film different from the other, both in genre, mood, and atmosphere. And this wasn't the first time I attempted it. Like, I wasn't going in blind, because we already practiced this in our class 11 film projects. This is where different groups were picked to do short films. I got lucky with my group. We had a little funny guy, Drew, over here. The main computer guy, Ben, and Beefcake Philip. If you're interested in watching the current and future films, you can find me at AK Productions on YouTube by searching AK Productions and one of the films, or you can come to my stand where there will be a link. And lastly, I'd like to thank my internal mentor, Jane, for always wanting the best for this project and never allowing a moment of rest. It was a genuine help. I'd like to thank my external mentor, Faik, who couldn't be here because he's working in Johannesburg. I'd like to give a huge thank to my best friend, Devlin, who, even though was in another city, never failed to call me and give me an outside perspective. I'd like to quickly thank my classmate, Julia, for doing one of the music for one of the films. And lastly, I'd like to thank my mom. She was the most supportive, even at times that she would overstep her bounds. But she was just supportive of everything I did. She's the type of person to say, I would say, I like apples, and then there's like a billion apples in the kitchen, like the day after. And this is no different. I remember just talking, and the topic of film and photography came up, and I was just yapping, just blah, blah, blah. And then she asked me if I wanted a camera, and I said, maybe I don't know. Then after a few days, we picked up the camera, and it all started from there. So this wouldn't have been at all possible without my mom. I love you. Thank you all for coming out, and I hope you enjoy the 3 films you're about to see.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Katja, and before I start presenting, I would just like to ask for everyone's understanding as what I'm about to present is still very raw and very recent. All right. When I first began planning my Waldorf Class 12 project, I thought I knew exactly what it would be. My idea was scientific, precise, and a little bit magical. I wanted to cultivate a chick embryo in a shellless environment. There was something fascinating about it, the idea of holding life in its utmost delicate form and nurturing it without its natural shell. I spent months preparing. I read about how the shell feeds the embryo with calcium, how to replace those minerals, and how to create a safe little world in a dish. I pictured myself watching this tiny spark of life grow, amazed at the miracle of creation. At the time, I thought this project would be about external creation, about proving what I could make and showing something physical to my classmates and teachers. But life, in its unexpected way, had a different project in plan for me. My father was first diagnosed with prostate cancer in 2019. I still remember that day vividly, the way the word cancer seemed to echo in the room. It felt like the ground beneath me shifted. But my father, he stayed calm. He always had this way of grounding us. Through radiation therapy, he fought and overcame it. We were blessed with several more years where life felt normal again. He used those years well. He read his books, shared his discoveries about life and spirituality, laughed with us at the dinner table, and, as always, welcomed everyone into his world with warmth. In those years, I sometimes forgot that we had to face that storm. I thought we had made it to the other side. Then, about a month ago, the cancer came back, this time as metastatic prostate cancer in the bone. For anyone who doesn't know, when prostate cancer spreads to the bones, it becomes a completely different battle. It usually moves to the spine, hips, and ribs. The focus shifts from curing the disease to managing pain and making the most of every day. Then came the night that changed everything. My father went to bed with a numb leg. He thought it was just fatigue, and by the next morning, he could not move his legs at all. The cancer had caused a spinal cord injury in his T9 vertebra, right in the middle of his spine. A spinal cord compression is when a tumor, like the cancer, presses on the main highway of nerves that carry messages from your brain to your body. Sometimes, if it's caught early, steroids, radiation, or surgery can relieve the pressure. But for my father, it was too late. He would never walk again. I will never forget walking into that hospital room that evening. The first thing I noticed was the sound. The steady beep of the heart monitor, the faint hiss of oxygen, the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes, the smell of disinfectant. And there, in the center of it all, was my father, lying so still, his legs covered with a thin hospital blanket. The world outside kept going, cars honking, people rushing to work, but for me, everything paused. In that moment, my project changed completely. It was no longer about creating life in a dish. It became about understanding life in my heart. I spent nearly every day with him in the hospital. Some days were full of conversation. He would talk about books he was reading, about life, about the soul, about what might come next. Other days were quiet, and I would simply sit beside him, holding his hand, listening to the hum of machines and the distant footsteps in the hallway. I learned that presence is love. You don't need to fix or do or say much. Sometimes just being there is enough. Despite losing the use of his legs, despite constant pain, my father refused to let despair define him. He had an openness and curiosity that inspired everyone around him. He read spirituality books daily and often shared his reflections with me. The last conversation we had and the last entry he wrote in his journal was about pain and suffering. He said, Pain and suffering are not the same. Pain is inevitable, but suffering happens when we resist the pain, when we fight against what already is. He told me, surrender to the pain, stop resisting completely, only then can peace exist alongside pain. I watched him live that truth. His body was failing, but his spirit was free. He smiled, he listened, he loved. He showed me that acceptance is the doorway to peace. After he passed about 2 weeks ago, grief came in waves. The first wave was regret. I thought about all the things I didn't say enough. I wish I had told him I loved him more often. I wish I had held his hand longer. I wish I had spent one more evening just listening to him dream out loud. Even though I gave him all of me in those final weeks, grief whispers that it's not enough. That's the quiet ache of loss. It always feels like you could have loved more, done more, been more. Then came the second wave, the fear of forgetting. In the early days, his voice and his laugh were sharp in my mind. I could almost hear him calling me from the other room. But as days passed, time felt like it was pulling me away from him. I became scared of losing the little details. The way his eyes lit up when he shared a new idea, the warmth of his hugs, the soft smile he wore when he was simply content with life. Grief, I've learned, isn't just about missing someone. It's about protecting the memory of the love that shaped you. Alongside grief came expectations, especially my own. I had so many for myself, my project, for how I would handle this loss. I thought I could keep performing, keep creating, keep carrying everything. But grief doesn't follow your schedule. It's like stacking boulders on your back until you can't move. I had to learn to put the boulders down, to meet myself with gentleness, and to let my heart be exactly where it is. I thought that in order to present a successful Waldorf project, I needed to bring something physical, a book, a painting, a craft, something you could see and touch. When all I had was my grief and reflections, I felt like I had failed. But slowly, I began to see that the growth I've experienced is far more profound than anything I could have created with my hands. My project became less about external creation and more about internal discovery. It became about learning how to live with love, grief, patience, and acceptance. A home my father helped me create with his words and his life. And yet, I did create something physical, something from the heart. I built a rendition of my father's dream home, the one he spent endless nights describing to me. He would talk about it like it was already real, the way the morning light would pour through the kitchen windows, the quiet corners for reading, the garden where he would drink his coffee and watch the sunrise. He talked about how it would feel, not just how it would look. Safe, warm, filled with openness and love. Bringing that dream into form felt like one last conversation with him. As I built it, I felt him beside me. Every wall, every window, every little space was a piece of his imagination brought into reality. In some way, it's my thanks to him. For every night he stayed up talking about life and dreams. For every lesson he left me with. And through all of this, I have not been alone. My mother has been my anchor. Her strength and love carried me through moments I didn't think I could survive. My friends, my teachers, my mentors, everyone who reached out with a message or hug, you've all been a part of this project. If there is one thing I hope you take from my journey, it is this. Life is fragile, but love outlives everything. We cannot control when we lose the people we love, but we can honor them by living the way they loved, openly, curiously, and without fear. My father's death is not just an ending, it is a beginning for me. I will carry forward his openness, his curiosity, and his lesson that peace comes not from resisting life, but from accepting it. I will try to live in a way that one day I can meet my own end with the same grace he did. Even as grief walks beside me, I know this. Love leaves a permanent mark. My father is no longer here, but he is everywhere I go. In the lessons he taught, in the way I now choose to live, and in the love that will never leave my heart. As a parting gift, he left me his journals, which I compiled with him. And the one thing that stood out to me was detachment. I'm just going to read an extract. Releasing yourself from attachments. There is no direct method. A lot of our activities and attachments are based on fear, anger, guilt, and pride, all ego-based. What you can do is smile, relax, and let go. Attachment to things drops away by itself when you no longer seek to find yourself in them, when you no longer seek to feed the ego. Through surrendering to God, you surrender the egoic feeling to God. Detachment is mostly progressive, but it can also be a complete, as a result of insight, revelation, etc. Complete detachment, in effect, is to have changed or removed a belief, a limiting belief, otherwise considered to be one of the most difficult mental achievements, and it's simply consistent letting go. Because of this, and my father's constant nagging and saying I have a beautiful bone structure for short hair, I decided to practice detachment by cutting off all of my hair. Prior to this, I thought that with long hair, I'm beautiful, and I will have confidence if my hair is long and sleek and whatever, and I won't feel beautiful if I cut it all off. So, as a practice of detachment and to surprise my father for his last birthday, I chopped all my hair off. And I would say that this was the biggest blessing in disguise, because I now have learned so much about myself, and I can feel comfortable in who I am, even with short hair. Thank you.
Sure, what a powerful and special first half. Thank you so much for your attention.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the second half of the second night of the Grade 12 project. My name is Jensen. When I first came to this school in grade 7, I was very aware of grade 12 and the chaos it tended to bring along with it. I knew about the projects because my mom had told me, and I would occasionally think about them and imagine what it would be like to stand up here and give my speech in front of so many people. Those daydreams would never last very long though, as it was so far off in the distant future that it felt almost pointless to even imagine such a thing. Now, what was once a distant future event and a daydream is the present, and I couldn't be happier and more proud of my class for making it this far. When I got my hands on the project presentation proposal sheet, it didn't take me very long to come up with the idea of making a stop-motion animated short film for my grade 12 project. For those of you who aren't so sure of what stop-motion is exactly, I'll give you all a very brief overview. Stop-motion is a process of filmmaking in which you take individual photos of an object or character in different stages of movement and play them back in a sequence in order to give the illusion that said object or character is moving on its own. If it sounds extremely tedious, time-consuming, and a bit painful, believe me, it is. In my proposal, I suggested that I would make a 5 to 10 minute long animated short film, which at the time sounded quite reasonable to my naive past self. I went into the summer holidays with big plans. I was going to knock off a lot of work on my checklist to make sure I didn't leave too much for the end. It's foreshadowing there. I planned on making good progress, writing scripts and storyboards, and making puppets and sets, and maybe even beginning the animation process. In reality, I think I wrote one thing in my journal. Maybe two. But it was clear that it was off to a bit of a rocky start. I admittedly have a big procrastination problem. I've known about this for a while, and I've been meaning to break the habit. But I have the tendency to procrastinate that. Luckily for me, I was fortunate enough to have my wonderful external mentor, Shani, who met with me almost every week online to keep me in check the whole way through. Shani was unfortunately unable to be here tonight, but I would really like you to know that I could not have done this without you, and I'm truly grateful for your help and support throughout this process, and I'm especially grateful for you putting up with my procrastination. The first step was to come up with the narrative and overall message of my film, as well as making a storyboard and live-action mock film as reference for when I would start animating. Shani and I began brainstorming ideas. At first, I wanted dialogue in my film. I quickly realized how time-consuming this would be, and I would have to manually sync the voice recordings and change the characters' mouths during animation. Let's just say I'm very glad I did not follow through with that idea. Eventually, I conjured up an image of a tall, slender figure in a suit carrying a briefcase with only one eye for a head. I loved how obscure and random this was, and so did Shani. From there, the story and world slowly flowed. After I had my storyboard outlined, I began gathering live-action reenactments of each scene. I did this to get an idea of how the puppets would need to walk and move, and the overall pacing of the film. I also needed to know how long each scene would be so that I could calculate how many images I would need to take. Thank you to my friends and my mom for acting in my mock movie. You guys are the real stars of the show. Without you, this animation wouldn't even exist. I've always had a love for stop-motion animation. Ever since I was very little, I would spend hours making short films using Lego or clay, or anything really that I could get my hands on. But I've never tried using puppets. Wire puppets, otherwise known as armatures, are the standard in the professional stop-motion industry. By no means am I saying I'm a professional. Used in films like Wallace and Gromit and Paranorman, they are skeletal figurines, mostly made of metal, with many posable joints for easy movement on set. I was more than certain I wanted to build and use my very own puppets for my animation, but I didn't have a single clue where to begin. I knew that aluminium wire was recommended as it was very pliable and quite sturdy. However, I struggled to find any aluminium wire in any of my local hardware stores, and online shops didn't give me any better results. Fortunately, my mom's partner, Evan, was so kind as to lend me some soldering wire, which isn't as strong as aluminium wire, but it was pliable, and therefore good for stop motion. There were some risks involved though. I ran a few stress tests to ensure the wire's capability of surviving being bent and supporting itself. The results weren't great. The wire would break after 20 or so bends, but it held up well if you only bent it every few minutes or so. This meant that it would work for stop motion puppets, as I would only need to make a few movements over a long period of time. To hold the wire armatures together, I used epoxy putty, which I could mold over the weak points to reinforce the puppet. When the epoxy putty dried, it became as hard as a rock, providing great stability to the joints of my armatures. Thankfully, only one of my puppets was hurt during the animation process. I originally wanted to use felt on my characters, as I really loved the texture and how they looked in stop motion form. But I ultimately decided to use plasticine, a type of soft clay. I made the heads of the characters out of Fimo clay, which I baked in the oven, so the eyes would not deform in shape throughout the animation process. After my storyboard was finalized and my puppets were made, I was able to start designing and building my sets. This mostly consisted of cutting cardboard and burning myself with Roxy's glue gun, which she so kindly let me borrow. Other than the second-degree burn, I mostly enjoyed the set building process. I ran into a few hiccups with some of the smaller details, but luckily for me, the real challenge was yet to come. When I finally started my animation process, I stuck to a strict schedule. I had 3 weeks to animate a total of 24 individual scenes, so I had a lot of work ahead of me. I first had to estimate how many frames I could capture within 1 hour to get a better understanding of how much time I would need to finish the filming. I ended up managing about 100 or so frames in 1 hour. I was animating in twos, which means that every time I would move a character, I would take 2 pictures, making a copy of every photo. I animated in 24 frames per second, meaning that every 24 pictures I took would produce 1 second of footage. 24 frames per second is the industry standard for stop-motion film, but my film will appear to be in 12 frames per second, since I was animating on twos. When filming using many still images, it is extremely important that lighting is consistent throughout, to prevent flickering and other light variation. Because of this, I boarded up my room, blocking light and all sources of ventilation. I had very little circulation in my room throughout the filming process, but I believe that it was well worth it. I spent the full 3 weeks animating every day for about 3 to 4 hours. I barely left my house. In total, I gathered around 3,782 total images. When I finally finished the animation process, it was incredibly satisfying to finally let some natural light and fresh air come into my room. It was like a reward for all the work I did. This project taught me a lot, not just about stop motion, but about myself. One of the most challenging aspects of this project for me was managing my time properly and learning how to find the motivation to get things done, even when I felt like doing anything but project work. Towards the very end, I was able to find motivation in the smaller things and take things step by step. I learned valuable lessons about planning, preparing, and more importantly, following through with said planning and preparing. And when I felt at my lowest, I discovered that throwing myself into my project was a massive help. Excuse me. I also learned a great deal about patience. Spending long periods of time working on sometimes even just a few seconds of footage was difficult at first. especially in this age where our attention spans have dwindled considerably thanks to our phones and social media. Being able to step away from those distractions and focus on something that might seem slightly boring on a surface level was freeing. I felt more focused, and as if I had more appreciation for the finer details of animation and the world around me. This journey has even helped me take just a few steps closer to figuring out what paths I would like to take after school. I believe, if I were able to acquire such a thing, a career in animation would be wonderful and incredibly fun. Thank you so much, and without further ado, I would like to present The Ladder, my very first stop-motion short film. Thank you everyone for watching. I really hope you all enjoyed. This movie is now available on YouTube if you would wish to watch it again, or maybe share it. I would like to take the time to thank my mom, Laurianne, and her partner, Evan, for supporting and helping me at home. My internal mentor, Mr. Stovall, for guiding me through the process at school. The biggest thank you to Shani Campbell, my external mentor, who kept me going, supported me, and was there for me whenever I needed her throughout my project. You are truly a star. I would like to give a big thank you to my friends, specifically Hannah, Katja, and Roxy. Without you guys, I think I would have lost my mind. And of course, thank you all for listening.
everybody. My name is Sophie Meadows, and for my Class 12 project, I learnt another language. Well, I didn't actually learn another language, but I did use one, and that language was Python. Some of you may be wondering, where on earth uses a language like that? So, let me quickly break it down for you. Python, an interpreted, dynamically typed computational paradigm, fuses syntactic austerity with algorithmic versatility for transdisciplinary inquiry. Its indentation-based structure, per PP8, optimizes cognitive clarity, mapping epistemic constructs to executable logic. Libraries like NumPy for tensor computations, SciPy for differential solvers, and TensorFlow for neural optimization empower rigorous analysis in quantum mechanics and bioinformatics. Jupyter's interactive REPL, read, evaluate, print, loop, forms a cybernetic workbench for real-time hypothesis testing, despite interpretive performance trade-offs. Evolved via communal PEPs, Python is a cornerstone in scientific computation. Now, I'd be very impressed if anyone understood fully what I was talking about, because quite honestly, I didn't understand what I was saying fully either. It's a good thing that explaining what Python is wasn't my Class 12 project, because I think I would have totally lost my audience. So, instead, let me tell you what I actually did. And what I did was create a robot with a Raspberry Pi. Now, when I say Raspberry Pi, I'm not talking about the one you can eat. I'm talking about the single board computer, about the size of a credit card, that is able to run a Linux-based operating system. And the Raspberry Pi is where it all started. As some of you may know, I was not at the school last year when my classmates got the brief for the Class 12 project. That means that I was faced with the challenge of choosing what I was going to do at the beginning of this year. Because of this, I was taking any ideas I could. And when my dad suggested I do something with the Raspberry Pi, I didn't hesitate to say yes. In hindsight, I probably should have done a bit more research into what I was getting myself into, but I unfortunately cannot go back and tell my past self that. Anyways, very soon after my project was approved, my dad and I went and bought the parts I would need for this robot. And because we misplaced the slip, there was no turning back. Now, this journey was more challenging than I could have ever imagined. And honestly speaking, it was a very lonely one as well. It was a bit like that one thing from Diary of a Wimpy Kid, the cheese touch, because it felt like everybody who knew how to use a Raspberry Pi was just avoiding me. Sorry about that, that was a bit of a cheesy analogy. I mean, even now, I still haven't found someone who knows how to use a Raspberry Pi, and it's the presentation evening of my actual project. Now, that's not to say that I didn't learn a lot about myself and the Raspberry Pi during this time. I mean, it would have been pretty concerning if I didn't. But I wanted to tell you a little of what I learned. The first thing being, there is a YouTube video for anything you can dream of. And that was very lucky in my case because I had no clue how to use a Raspberry Pi. Second is, you can never go wrong with a fresh set of eyes. Whether that's taking a break or looking at your code a few days later, it does wonders. Third, now as much as I don't want to admit this, when in doubt, ask Dad. Because somehow, even though he has never used a Raspberry Pi in his life, he still knows what's wrong and what questions I can ask to fix it. And lastly, the one I think I'm most guilty of is it's very easy to say I'm just going to do it tomorrow. Procrastination played a huge part in my project. And looking back, I would have liked to tell my past self that it probably wouldn't have been as challenging as it was if I'd just taken it a little bit over a longer period of time. But I think that's enough talking about what I learned, and now I need to talk about how I learned it. I said it before, but this project was a challenging one, and I was faced with obstacles that I never even anticipated. The first of which was using a Raspberry Pi. Now, I've previously done about 2 years of coding, But unfortunately, so much more is needed. I guess it was very naive of me to think that I could just run a Python script on a Raspberry Pi and it would work. Instead, you have to know what packages to download and how to update and upgrade them. Even now, I don't fully understand exactly how the Raspberry Pi works, but I guess that gives me something to do in the future. But anyways, let's get into the real details of how I started building my robot. It all started on a Sunday, quite a few weeks after my project was approved, when my dad sat me down and told me I actually had to do something and not just sit there and think about it. That afternoon, I set up my monitor, my Raspberry Pi, and the 2 motors I planned on getting to work. After about 4 hours of coding, something finally happened. I was very happy about this, but I do have to say that it was one very small step towards a bigger picture. Now, the next thing I had to do, I ended up installing was YOLO. And when I say YOLO, I'm not speaking about you only live once. I'm speaking about you only look once, which is the object detection. This did not go as planned, but when does it ever go as planned? As the camera we got couldn't be connected to the Raspberry Pi 5, the model that I had, because it was only compatible with the Raspberry Pi 4 and beneath. I was hoping this was going to be the last of my problems, but it was just the beginning, because even when I did get it compatible with the Raspberry Pi, guess what? It still didn't work. And so I had to opt into using a USB webcam instead, and I wouldn't have had that option if my dad hadn't had that genius idea. At this point, I thought I was over the worst of my problems when it came to YOLO, but for some reason, my Raspberry Pi kept crashing every time I tried to install one of the packages needed to run this algorithm. So this took me on a journey of learning how to use an external environment on a Raspberry Pi. And finally, it ended up working. But I was far from done, as this was the only real progress I'd actually made. The next thing I needed to do was get the line detection working. And for that, I needed to use infrared sensors. Now, the actual putting the pieces together was relatively easy, but for some reason, I guess you guys could guess it, the code didn't work. And it was only after some investigation that I realized I had to install a different variable for the Raspberry Pi 5 than the variable used for all other Raspberry Pis. Now the sensors started working, and a wheel was turning. But one wheel obviously isn't enough. And so I went on another journey, trying to figure out why one of the motors wasn't working. It ended up not being the motor, and not being the code, but being the H-bridge, which was, at the beginning, the only thing that worked. So now I had 2 components, the YOLO detection and the line following. But my real goal was to join them together. I wrote 3 different coding scripts. And by this point, you're probably saying to yourselves, one of them must have worked. But the reality is, none of them did. And by that point, I have to say I was ready to give up. Except my dad would not let that happen. Again, he sat me down. This happened quite a few times, I have to say. And he told me that I had to complete what I set out to do. And at the time, I have to say I was very frustrated at him. So I did, in fact, manage to get it working, and that is why I can now present to you my robot, which is able to follow a line and and turn around whenever it sees a person due to the YOLO detection. There were times during this project where I said to myself that I never wanted to think about it again. I bet we can all agree with that. Yet now it's done, I've realized that this project has taught me more than I could have ever imagined. And instead, it's something that I want to remember in the future. It took me a long time to realize that this project isn't all about the final product. It's more about what you get from the progress, and how you learn, develop, and adapt to get to that final stage. The lessons that it taught me are not only applicable in the world of coding and robotics, but also in my own life, such as, now this is not supposed to sound cliche, the value of perseverance, even when procrastination seems like the easier option, and in all honesty, nothing is ever as bad as you think it is, especially when you're in that moment. So now I've done all the boring talk, let me show you what my Raspberry Pi can do. So there were a few problems. As you can see, look how thick the line is and it's still not able to follow it. When we actually did get it up working on a semi-straight line, please ignore my feet. I completely forgot that I was supposed to take them out. But as you can see, it's working now. It's not very fast and it's not very straight, but at least it's rolling and it's doing something. And finally, we got it working on a course, which for some reason now the video isn't working. And even though it's not very smooth, it's correcting itself, and that is a win for me. I think in the future I'll use different sensors because you can see they're not, or maybe a bigger line actually now that I think about it. So this is a bit of what's going on behind the scenes. On the left you can see no line detecting and that it's stopping, and line detecting, it's moving forward, meaning that when both sensors are detecting the line, it will move forward, and when only one sensor detects the line, then it will pivot left or pivot right, depending on which sensor is picking that up. And finally, this is the YOLO. On the right, you can see that it's, okay, basically, let me explain. When the person is seen in that box, then one of the wheels starts moving. You can see it's moving, and the other one isn't moving. And when I step out of the box, it stops moving. And on the right there, it's just all the code saying if the person in the box is true or false. True being someone is actually in the box, and false not being in the box. Anyways, and that brings me to the end of what my Raspberry Pi can do, and to the beginning of my thank yous. First off, I want to thank my parents for primarily funding this project. Though I have to say I did buy a few of the components myself, just so you know. I wanted to thank my dad, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. It's not because he's a bad parent or anything, he's just... but he... Honestly, I don't think this project would have been completed if he wasn't there to have the hard talks with me and to really set me on the right path. I wanted to thank my mum because obviously she was there to support me and listen to all my frustrations with my dad when he sat me down. And she was also the one who filmed a lot of the... She's shaking her head and nodding her hands right now. I wanted to thank my sister because even though this is the first thing from her interest, she still came and asked me what I was doing, and I really appreciate that. I want to thank my internal mentor, Mr. Mercer, because you kept me on track, not only with my project, but also with the things that weren't at the forefront of my mind, mainly being my research and especially my journaling. And I don't think I would have had a complete journal on my table today if it weren't for you. So I really thank you for that. And finally, I wanted to thank everybody who listened to me tirelessly complain about this project. I think you know who you are. And so a big thank you also to everyone who's here tonight. You know, it's a very full crowd. But is it really 500 people on your... No. Anyways, thank you so much.
Hello, my name is Drew Olden, and for my Class 12 project, I filmed and produced a rock climbing documentary. From the age of 11, climbing has been my main sport and a big interest of mine. And when the Class 12 projects came around, I knew I wanted to do something climbing related, but with a topic that could open up new aspects in it and challenge me as well as being enjoyable. I initially struggled to choose a topic, but having recently started editing short videos of my friends and I for climbing for YouTube, a documentary seemed like a great next step for me. I chose to focus my film on 3 popular climbing areas in the Western Cape, Rocklands in the Cederberg, and Oudtshoorn and the Cape Peninsula. For my research component, I decided to explore the climbing history, geology, flora and fauna, and environmental issues for each area. These aspects are not only interesting to me personally, but are important in a time where the environment is becoming increasingly endangered. As a climber, it's important to me that we do our bit to preserve the beautiful natural spaces that we climb in, so that we can all enjoy it for many years to come. For those who don't know a bit about what climbing is, basically it's when you start at the bottom of a piece of rock and work your way up it, following a specific route and series of holds and natural features. The cliffs for outdoor climbing are called crags, and the routes are all climbs and named. There are some great apps and guidebooks that help you locate the routes and grades that you want to climb. Climbing routes also have a difficulty ranking that climbers agree upon. In South Africa, the routes range from grade 12, which is an easy scramble, all the way up to grade 40, which is a challenging ascent that only a few in the world can achieve. There are a few different climbing styles, and climbers tend to do the one that suits them best and they enjoy the most. The style that uses ropes is called sport and trad climbing, and these are done with a partner called a belayer. Bouldering, on the other hand, is climbing much shorter rocks, about 4 to 5 meters high, without a rope. If you fall from a boulder, you land on a mattress laid out on the ground called a crash pad. The bouldering grading system goes from a 3A, which is relatively easy, all the way up to a 9A, which is very difficult. I've been really privileged to experience and gain the skills needed to climb in all 3 disciplines, and I enjoy each of them for different reasons. Filming a documentary ended up being a lot harder than expected, not only to get the footage I wanted, but to find the motivation to work on it at home. I found the stress of having to show it to so many people make me overthink it for a long time. This turned into something that was a fun challenge into just a challenge. I learned a lot of filming skills and editing skills and so much more during this process, and was fortunate enough to have professional photographer and filmmaker Gareth Bird as my external mentor. I've known Gareth for a while and we've enjoyed many climbs together. He taught me a lot about the basics of filming out in the field, as well as technical skills for cameras, getting the best shots, and general production. I was also lucky enough to learn a lot from filmmakers Steve McCurra and Carlos Francisco, both of whom shared helpful tips and skills when it came to the filming, post-production, and other technical aspects. I began the process in term 1, planning my shoots and filming locally around Cape Town, improving my skills and figuring out what shots I wanted to get. During the Easter holidays, I visited Rocklands and Oudtshoorn to film and research these destinations. During term 2, I focused on filming the Cape Peninsula section of my film. At this stage, my motivation was very low, and it was much easier to dream about all the things that I would do after the project and actually get on with the editing. But as the presentations drew nearer, I took a step back and remembered why I'd chosen this project and what it meant to me, and managed to work more of a sense of satisfaction and excitement into what I was producing. I began editing during the holidays, which turned out to be a nightmare. But eventually, I got it done with little time to spare. I am very happy to have learned so much about my 3 favorite climbing locations and to have learned about film production. My documentary is definitely by no means a professional film, but it was a big step up for me in my production of films, and I'm excited to see where it takes me in the future, although I'm definitely not keen to do a lot of editing in a while. While filming my documentary, I had a really great time outdoors with all my friends, and that's one of the many things that is so special to me about the sport. To be part of a relatively small group of climbers in Cape Town has a sense of community I would have never expected. The community is really supportive and multi-generational, and I've climbed with people of all ages, from my age and younger, all the way to climbers in their 70s. I've learned a lot of valuable life lessons from all of them, as well as from climbing itself, which has really tested me mentally and physically over the years. Climbing has shaped a part of my life and who I am today, and I look forward to more adventures and connections with this amazing sport. I'd like to say a big thank you to my internal mentor, Jay in Eastwood, for helping me throughout the process and keeping me on track, and to my external mentor, Gareth Bird, who isn't here tonight. Thank you to all my friends who supported me along the way and through this journey, and a big thank you to my mom and dad, who was always there for me when I needed help. I would like to play a short clip. Although this is not a direct extract from my film, it shows a part of the journey and some insight into what the film is about. If you'd like to watch the full documentary, you can scan the QR code over at my table, and you can watch it from there. Thank you very much.
Music has... Oh, my bad. Wait a sec for your setup. Music has been a passion of mine for a very long time, and my love for it has only grown. I've decided to make a demo album for my project. I have faint memories of my 4-year-old self screaming songs out of my bedroom window. Honestly, I thought I was just blessing people's ears. But in fact, I definitely wasn't doing that. When I was in preschool, my mom would drive my brothers and I to school in the morning. I insisted there had to be music blasting at 6 a.m. Otherwise, I would say I felt nauseous. And the music had helped me. But in reality, I just wanted to blast music. My mom obviously felt bad for me and played the music. And I would be jumping around while my brothers were still waking up. When I was around 14 years old, one of my biggest inspirations was Shawn Mendes. And I watched his videos religiously. I came across one where he had said he taught himself the guitar. And that's when I thought, if he can do it, then why can't I? So I sat down every day for hours on end with my brother's guitar, learning chords and watching videos. It was a very frustrating process because everyone made it look so much easier than it actually was. And I ended up having small mental breakdowns about it. But I never gave up, and thankfully I didn't, because that's where my music writing started properly. When I eventually got the hang of simple chords, I felt like I'd finally made some progress. I would then start writing songs and making up melodies to fit emotions or situations, whether I was in them or not. Sometimes I get inspired by a word in a different song, and I create a whole another song based on the word I liked from the other song. Sometimes it's hard for me to find inspiration. I'll just sit down and nothing will come to mind. Then I feel at a complete loss. So I decide to take a long break to clear my head. When I create something, I would go straight to my family and play it for them and ask their opinion on it as well as my friends. I wanted to know from the people I trusted the most and that were closest to me. Even though I trusted everyone's opinion, I was still worried they were telling me it was good when maybe it wasn't good. So then I would go to my brother Daniel. He just says things how it is, so I knew I would get an extremely honest opinion from him. I was always trying to come up with songs that were never nearly the same, because I want all my songs to be as unique as possible. I never would finish any of my songs, and to this day, I still struggle to, because I come up with an idea that I like, and then I get tired halfway through and take a break. But during my break, I come up with a new idea that I think is better than the idea before, and it turns into a repetitive cycle where I always feel like I can do better than the last one. This project has really pushed me to finish my songs. For my 16th birthday, I got software to create music with a studio microphone and with headphones. I was so excited because it was a huge upgrade from what I usually did, which was just sit in my bedroom with my guitar. It took me a year to actually sit down and figure out the software because it was so overwhelming. I was just staring at a computer, looking at all these things I've never seen before. I was completely confused, and I didn't do anything until I decided I'm actually going to get nowhere with my music if I don't. And especially when this project came up, I knew this was the time I had to actually figure it out. When I started this album, I had no clue what genre I wanted to do, so I decided to just write and create what I felt, because I wanted to experiment with all the tools while learning the system. When I first started learning the system, I tried to do one thing at a time, instead of look at everything all at once. I slowly but surely started to figure things out. Making songs was difficult because I was also producing them all by myself. For example, I would choose a specific instrument I liked, the sound of, and the system, they would only show you a digital keyboard, so I was really on my own. I had to make every little background sound. For example, if I wanted drums, I had to manually put the drum beat in as well as every other instrument. For my album cover, it was a process. I asked my friends Aden and Liv to come over and help me. We had a whole day of photography and messing around with different lightings, and different angles. We got so many cool shots, and I'll show you my top 3. This was one that was taken in my mom's car. We used my friend Aden's camera to flash the red lights and not actually even take a photo on it. So he ended up taking the photo on his phone for this one. This one was one of my favorites because it was quite different from the rest. Then there was this one. This one we really liked. We did it in a parking lot, somewhere in a parking lot, where my friend Livy, so Aden would take a photo with some shutter speed being at a certain, I don't really know about cameras, so that. And then Livy would run around me with a phone torch, and then I had to stay completely still. And then he would take the photo again, and it would somehow capture the light from the phone torch. I don't know, it was really cool. And then, no, wrong side. Then this one. This one was also in the parking lot. It was fun to do because Livy ran around me. Livy had to run around me, and Aden obviously edited her again in the thing. So we got one of her in the back, and then the front one was edited again. But honestly, it was such a fun process. Like, I would love to do it again, to be honest. I would also meet with my external mentor, Matthew Creel, most Wednesdays after school, to check how I'm doing with the software, and if there were any complications. There were a few along the way that even he was a bit confused about, because I somehow managed to mess up a tremendous amount. He honestly helped me so much with learning and understanding the system and music in general. He was an amazing mentor, and I'm so thankful he had said yes and helped me along the way, even though a lot of the time I would meet with him after he had told me to finish my song with an unfinished song. He had a lot of patience with me, which I really appreciated. When I finished my first song on the album, I was really excited because I finally had created something that was fully done. It never took me as long as a few of my other songs because it just flowed, and I had a really good time working with that song. I didn't enjoy the last part where I had to mix and master because I had to make small edits, and it was tedious and frustrating. I eventually finished and exported the file to my phone, and I would play it on my speakers, whether that be in the car or in my room. But it still wasn't to my liking, so I had to go back and make more changes to it, which took even longer. Music is very important in my life, and I was scared to choose it for my project because I was afraid it was going to take the joy out of it, because now it was a stressful thing for me to do, instead of a release like it usually is for me. I tried to find a good balance between it, and I got there eventually. But I had a lot of writer's block and couldn't come up with anything for short periods of time. So I would worry that that was it and I'd never be able to make a song ever again. But I got too much in my head about it and overthought everything, which didn't help. My internal mentor, Miss Pumeza, helped guide me along on this process and checked up on me regularly, which I really appreciated, because I do procrastinate a lot and struggle with my time management. My time management and procrastination has unfortunately not gotten better during this process, but my knowledge and understanding on the software has. I just want to say thank you to Matthew Creel and Ms. Pumeza and everyone that has helped me and inspired me during this process. I couldn't have got through it mentally without anyone's help, and I want to just thank everyone for being here tonight and all your support. Thank you. I'm now going to perform one of my songs that I've made quite recently. I decided to do a live acoustic version because it all started on guitar. That's where I started writing music, and I hope you like it. It's called Wait For You.
Give it a week, they say. It'll be over if you pray. Yeah, the pain will fade away, away, away. Yeah, I will be there if you fall. I will be there when you go. 'Cause falling for you is my fault. But there's nothing more I want than for me to be all that you want. So and I will wait for you. I want need some help, you need some company. Never need to worry, I'm right here. Never need to worry, I'm here. And we talk almost every night. It seems to speed up time. I look and it's 5:15 in the morning. And you don't need to ask me twice. If you need me, I'll be by your side. In the middle of the night, when it's boring, 'cause there's nothing more I want than for me to be all that you want. Oh, I will wait for you. I wanna be the one you call when you need more than a friend to hold. I just wanna be there in your bed, you know, twisting up the sheets, how it goes. I wanna be the one you see when you need some help, you need some company. Never need to worry, I'm right here. Never need to worry, I'm here. Said you never need to worry, I'm right here. You never need to worry, my dear, no, I'm right here. Waiting for you, waiting for you.
Thank you. Let's see. Can you go? Ah, okay. I wasn't sure if I was like, yeah. I hope, I'm sure everybody's been waiting for this moment. The final and last presentation of the evening. Almost time to go home. My name is Veronica Tawine, and I will be talking about my grade 12 project. Sorry. Building foundations. Imagine walking into your school one morning and everything feels brand new. Fresh paint, modern classrooms, and updated facilities. Renovating a school can bring about a transformation that affects not only the physical space, but the entire school community. Sorry. Renovating a school is about more than just aesthetics. It's about creating an environment that fosters learning, promotes safety, and reflects the needs of the students and teachers. In this presentation, I'll walk you through the reasons why schools should undergo renovations, the process involved, and the benefits of renovation, as well as my example of a school renovation. Did I have something for this? Yes. Okay. One of the primary reasons schools undergo renovation is due to aging infrastructures. Schools built decades might not meet modern educational needs. From outdated heating systems to poor insulation, these physical conditions can create uncomfortable and even unsafe learning environments. Another major factor is the evolution of teaching methods. Traditional classrooms may no longer meet the needs of today's diverse curriculums. Renovations can help integrate collaborative spaces and more flexible layouts. Schools must adhere to safety standards. Renovations can address concerns like wheelchair accessibility, fire safety systems, and improved lighting. This not only ensures the safety of everybody, but also complies with the regulations. I'm very sorry, I'm reading slow because my brain is slow. The reason I chose... Did I? Yes. Okay. The reason I chose this project is because I find that the beginning of children's educational lives are very important.
When I was little, I remember my kindergarten being the best place with a nice outdoor garden, a great jungle gym, and a colorful classroom to enter to every single morning. But with this project, I've realized that not every child has the same opportunity. My bad. Planning out my project had to start with deciding a school I would like to work with. I decided on a school in Kalell. When I first visited the school, I was surprised and horrified to see what condition the school was in. There were 4 toilets, but only one worked, and it barely had a door. So that meant when it rained, they would use a bucket inside to use for the toilet, and later would dump it out when the rain would stop. Sorry. The roof on the school, on the outside, was rusted and had holes, causing many leaks inside. There we go. What I started doing was the roof. I started with the roof because I felt like that was the most, because most of the times the children spent most... Thank you, Mommy. Most of the time when the children were learning, they spent inside. And as winter was approaching, I decided to fix the roof first. So that way there wouldn't be leaks. I removed the old rusted roofs and replaced them with new ones. Funny story, as I was busy up on the roof and I took this photo, I remembered that I was afraid of heights and got stuck up on the roof for like a solid 30 seconds, too scared to come down. I then moved on to the bathroom. I decided, instead of tearing down the bathrooms and putting them somewhere else or renovating them, I decided to move the bathrooms inside. They should be the inside. Okay, sorry, my bad. I decided to move the bathrooms inside to make it safer for the children, so that way they wouldn't have to go outside continuously. With this project, the reason why I chose this project is because, not only because I find children's beginning education important, but also because when I started choosing my projects, I thought a lot about my project. I thought about everything and anything anyone wanted to do. From Emma's cooking book to James' instrument lesson, I thought about everything. But then I remembered everything starts with kindergarten. I remember kindergarten as my starting place. It's something that got me into wanting to learn more, and it's something that really made me love school much, much more. The struggles that came with this project is, as many, many people struggle with, procrastination. There would be days I would wake up at 7 o'clock in the morning, I would sit in my bed, look at my phone, go back to sleep. I'll meet with the people tomorrow. But with the help of all my friends, and with my parents, and with my external mentor, Thuli, helped me get this project done. When it came to presenting this project, I didn't know what to say. I don't know if construction is interesting to anybody here, but it definitely was to me. I really didn't want to do this project, really didn't want to. I don't know if I can play the video. Don't know whether it would play. Oh, I was not excited. I was not excited about this project at all. But with the help of people, and with the help of realizing that this is a big thing I'm doing, I'm not just helping myself with getting this project over and done with, but I'm helping children and I'm helping people get a safe environment to learn in. I just want to give my words of gratitude. I want to say thank you to my external mentor, Thuli,
who helped talk to me and encourage me to meet with her, even though I really didn't want to because I didn't have lists to get out of the bed in the morning. I want to thank my mom for pushing me, and I want to thank all my teachers and my internal mentor, Mevrou, for always keeping me motivated and afloat when I felt nervous. And I want to give a big, special thanks to my two friends, Julia and Jade, who would stay up with me till 3 a.m. when I used to cry about things I could easily fix. Thank you. Oh, yes. Shucks, I forgot. Woo-hoo. Am I back? Yeah. I would just like to say a big warm thank you to everybody that came and supported our Class 12 students in this journey. Your presence and show of support is valued and thanked. I would love to give the biggest thanks to our guardians. I would like to give the biggest thanks to our guardians, Anya, Jane, and Ms. Pimeza, for being there for us and understanding our frustrations and worries and always lending a helping hand when we needed it. If you guys would kindly come up on stage. Yes, it is. I want to give a thanks to all our parents for being our rock and biggest supporters throughout our entire lives and many milestones we have overcome this year. Thank you to all our mentors who have helped guide us into the direction we have achieved on this day and listening to us and not only teaching but working with us. I would like to give another big thank you to our ground staff and support staff for helping us in making the hall look beautiful and being able to present it to everybody today. And Hannah.
A little message from the class. Dear Katja, we just want to say that we are all very proud of you and that what you have managed to do to stand up here and talk about something so sensitive is something really beautiful, and you are the bravest person I know, and I love you so much, and everyone here is very proud of you, and we all love you.
And lastly, I want to give the most ginormous thank you to my class. The support we have given each other through this year, not only with these projects, but with the plays and Eurythmy, us being there for each other is very important, as we as a class all know the stress we are all going through individually. I hope you can keep up the support through our final years of high school. Thank you, everybody, and good night.
And there's another thank you, very big thank you to Ant, Nick, and Sydney for helping us with the audio visual. We could not have managed without you.
course, I have to say thank you to David for filming. They will be up on YouTube within a few weeks' time. If you go to Constantia Waldorf and you search, you'll find the school profile, and the videos from these nights will be up for posterity and for you all to enjoy and share. Please have a wonderful evening. Thank you for coming and sharing this time. Class 12s, we are so proud of you. You have blown us away. What a spectacular set of evenings and presentations. Truly, truly well done. And because I never stop being a guardian, I also have to tell you, you can't leave tonight until you've packed your stall away. So please, parents and family that are here, please help and support that they can pack everything up and take it home with them this evening. Thank you so much, everyone. Goodbye.